Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well. Welcome to today's upload. Before we jump into it, just a couple quick links. As many of you may know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership is in the description below. Merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman, Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support the channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It does not cost a cent. Click the like button, takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads that I put out daily, click that bell icon, and folks, please leave a comment and share the video. Why? Well, these things, they really do help this channel to continue to grow and go. They definitely do matter, and I appreciate them. And with that, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump in to today's upload, shall we? Briefly, I normally do live stream Saturday Nightmares live from upstate New York on Saturday, 12 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. That is not happening. It's going to happen tonight, Friday night, and it will be at 12 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. My daughter turns 18 tomorrow, and we have kind of plans to do some things, and she gave me an ultimatum. And she said, I know how much you love doing your live stream, but she said to me, it's our last birthday together as a child. She goes, you've raised me for 7 years by yourself, and I want your undivided attention, except for when I hang out with my friends. She said, so what I was thinking you could do is you can do your live stream on Friday. That way you get to hang out with everyone on the channel at 12 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, which we'll be doing that tonight. And she goes, then get up in the morning, give me my presents. I'll go hang out with my friends, and you can go up to where Tom Mezek disappeared because I know it's his 10th anniversary. And I kind of looked at her and I'm like, wow. Did you really think this out like that? She goes, yep. And I said, all right. So live stream will be tonight instead of tomorrow. And yeah, my baby girl is going to be 18 years old. That's so crazy. And in a couple of months, on March 1st, my oldest daughter is going to be 21. Unbelievable. In a matter of like 6-month period of time, both of my daughters have hit a mile marker of birthdays. So live stream tonight. I hope to see you all there. Let's get into this upload. So yesterday I did a poll, and that poll was, I want the channel to really broaden. I believe there is an ultimate connection between the paranormal, cryptids, the shadow government, the Luciferian agenda. And when I started this channel, I really didn't believe that the tentacles of the Luciferian agenda was that broad. To be honest with you, I didn't think about it. I only thought about cryptids. And then as the channel, and paranormal, but as the channel grew and I started to read more and research more, I started to put the pieces together and realize that, holy cow, it is all connected. The main puzzle piece was Skinwalker at the Pentagon when all of that happened to Axelrod and his family. After a naval intelligence officer goes and investigates the Nimitz Tic Tac UFOs, debriefs at Skinwalker Ranch with NIDS, which is a little weird if you think about it. Wouldn't he go to the Pentagon? And then from Skinwalker Ranch goes home, and all of the other naval intelligence researchers went back to their respected homes as well, all in Virginia. Each family of the members of that investigation team all had experiences with dogmen, shadow figures, phantom footsteps, and orbs. 4 paranormal encrypted events centered around a UFO investigation conducted by naval intelligence officers. When I first read that, my whole view on everything changed. And I want this channel to go further. So, yes, we will always talk about Dogman. There will always be a fascination with Dogman, 100%. I had my own encounter. That's the only encounter I know without a shadow of a doubt truly happened, because I experienced it. I take everyone else at their word. 1, because I know they exist because I had my own encounter. And 2, I wasn't with you guys when you had your encounter, so who am I to not believe you? But the Luciferian agenda's tentacles stream out so far and so deep. I talked about the Super Soldier program and how Duncan Cameron summoned a creature from a portal. How Duncan O'Finian and 12 or 11 other kids from a project called Project Superman, or Project Talent, Project Talent, went and landed a Black Op helicopter. They were flown in a Black Op helicopter to Cambodia. They landed. A Naval SEAL team and Marine Recon team were pinned down. These 12 kids landed, boys and girls, held hands in a semicircle, and projected that energy. And within a 20-mile radius, every Khmer Rouge soldier was dead. Montauk boys, Duncan Cameron, Project Talent, Duncan O'Finian, Preston Nichols was part of the Project Superman, the USS Eldridge. So it's all connected. Now, I've talked about how United States government, the progression of our weapons came from these demons / aliens, the Draconian / Draco, 2 different species, essentially one related species. The Draco are a winged, powerful reptilian creature. Draconian are bipedal and very, very aggressive. Both are aggressive. They work hand in hand with the Gray, and a lot of their work is done in deep underground facilities. I believe that a large part of the northern part of New Mexico, southern part of Colorado, there is a deep underground city there where it connects to Dulce, Taos, Los Alamos. It just, once again, just like the Luciferian agenda's tentacles, it just sprawls out through. Now, prior to World War II, every country in the world was fighting pretty much the same. Bayonets, mustard gas, some semi-automatic rifles, Gatling gun that's twisted, very compared to what we have now, primitive weapons. Hell, compared to what was in World War II. Not even a short period of time away. We're fighting with bayonets and biplanes, just technology that we should have had, but that progression went way too fast because in a short period of time we have nuclear weapons, and there were treaties made. Presidents made treaties. Eisenhower, Truman, Roosevelt. They all met with these demons. Part of the Luciferian agenda. The Illuminati is a tool of the Luciferian agenda. And, but there were meetings with the Nazi Party, the National Socialist Party. And they were quite powerful. They were a war machine because of their arrangements and their relationships with. Why do you think Adolf Hitler was so fascinated with the occult? Because he was trying to figure out just how powerful these creatures were. And just should he trust these creatures? Can he wipe them out? Well, he knew he couldn't, but he researched, delved into the occult. And it was because of the alliance he had with the alien/demons. I have got some information right now that I'm going to share with you that is absolutely mind-blowing. And in the next couple of weeks, I'm going to go through a lot of this with you guys, on top of sharing subscriber experiences with Dogman, Bigfoot, crawlers. That's another thing. Crawlers were created by these creatures. Very interesting. But yeah, so let's jump into this right now. A Nazi demonic alien connection. The last World War was not simply a war fought between allies and Axis or democracy. It was also the planetary battlefield for a galactic World War III, when alien civilizations sponsoring the Nazis and alien civilizations sponsoring the Americans fought once again for control of planet Earth, while using its unsuspected armies as pawns in their interstellar conflict. The conventional view of the outbreak of World War II is one in which Germany and Japan just happened to emerge as fascist military superpowers at the same time and decided to join forces and take over the entire world in this view. It was coincidental that Japan would build an imperial fleet and become an invincible naval power, and that Germany would simultaneously develop a fearsome blitzkrieg capability using coordinated air and ground forces. Even at face value, this hypothesis seems absurd to some. Such grand historical coincidences rarely occur, and usually turn out the results of meticulous, long-range planning. And that seems to be the case with World War II. Now a growing group of researchers into the circumstances of Hitler's rise to power and the sudden coordinated emergence of militant fascism all over the world see the roots of World War II is entirely new and even more disturbing light. Could it have been decided well in advance at some very high level that Japan would take over all of Asia and Australia, while Germany and Italy would divide up Europe, Russia and North and South America, where Spain, South Africa, and Argentina, already fascist, dictate part of the alliance? According to researchers in the new school of thought, such a division of effort made perfect sense, since domination of Asia required control over the vast Pacific Ocean area that only a superior naval force could handle, while the conquest of the massive continent areas of Europe, Russia, and the Americas would necessitate control of the air and huge, highly mechanicalized, fast-moving armies. Some are arguing now that there is an invisible hand behind all of this, and moreover, that it was not earthly. Cumulative torrents of information now emerge from insiders that seem to indicate that planet Earth may in fact be a battleground between extraterrestrial/demonic forces, and that indeed we are in the middle of a real intergalactic dimensional war. Could it be that for a millennia, while we struggled with our swords, bows, and arrows, man-powered naval vessels, these extraterrestrial/demons apparently paid scant attention to us? But with the advent of World War II, we became players on this cosmic and dimensional stage. The following is argued the once hidden World War II story. After World War I, at the end of 1919, ex-Corporal Adolf Hitler met Dietrich Eckart in Munich. Eckart, a sophisticated and wealthy publisher, editor-in-chief of an anti-Semitic publication called In Plain German. He was also an occultist in the highest circle of the Thule Society, an esoteric group founded in Germany in 1918. He had been a student of the Russian metaphysicist G.I. Gov'T. Because of his admiration for Eckhart, Hitler joined the society. The Thule Society had regularly seances during which the attendees reportedly communicated with demons and attempted to invoke the Antichrist. During one such session, Eckhart believed that he was told by his spirit guide that he would have the honor of training the coming Great One. The incantation of the Antichrist. He soon became convinced that Hitler was the chosen one, and he took him under his wing. According to Wolf Schwartzwaller in The Unknown Hitler, there could be no doubt that Eckhart trained Hitler in techniques of self-confidence, self-projection, persuasive oratory, body language, and discursive sophistry. Using these capabilities, Hitler became a powerful speaker, able to mesmerize and excite vast audiences. He learned to start his speeches softly and then build to a peak of pretended frenzied fever accompanied by animated gestures. He also developed a hypnotic power over individuals. Eckhart, it is reported, also passed on to Hitler all of his occult knowledge in ritual and sexual black magic. Just like America, Eckhart is essentially Germany's Crawley. According to Trevor Ravenscoft in The Sphere of Destiny regarding the practices of the Thule Society, indulgence in the most sadistic rituals awaken penetrating visions into the workings of evil intelligences and bestowed phenomenal magical powers. At the completion of his training, Hitler claimed to have been born anew, filled with a new strength and the resolve he would need to carry out his mandate. Eckhart died 3 years later in 1923 and reportedly said on his deathbed, "Foul Hitler, he will dance, but it is I who have called the tune. I have initiated him into the secret doctrine, opened his centers of vision, and given him the means to communicate with his powers. Do not mourn me. I shall influence history more than any German." The following year, Hitler dedicated the second volume of his book, Mein Kampf, or My Struggle, to Eckhart. Eckhart's claim that he had given to Hitler the means to communicate with powers had been interpreted to mean that Hitler could now solicit advice from those same entities that Crowley referred to as the secret chiefs, since Eckhart was basically a disciple of Crowley. Crowley, who has sometimes referred to as the Great Beast, was the head of the infamous occult organization, the Order of the Golden Dawn, in London. In 1919, the Thule Society became more political and was instrumental in starting the German Workers' Party under the leadership of Thuleist Karl Harrer. In 1920, this evolved into the National Socialist German Workers' Party, or NSDAP, commonly known as the Nazi Party, drawing its membership from the top echelons of the Thule Society, including Rudolf Hess, Heinrich Himmler, Alfred Rosenberg, and Adolf Hitler. In The Gods of Eden, William Bramley says, the Thule was a society of assassins. It held secret courts and condemned people to death. It is likely that many victims murdered by the district command had been condemned earlier in the secret courts of the Thule. The conception of the swastika flag adopted by the Nazis is attributed to Dr. Friedrich Krohn, a member of the Thule. Thus, according to Crystal Links, with the victory of the Nazi Party, the occult tradition was carried on into the Third Reich. But Hitler's occult training was not yet complete. After the death of Eckhart, as if on schedule, another even more powerful teacher came into his life. Karl Hausenfer was 54 years old, professor of political science at Munich University. Hitler entered jail in 1924 with German intelligence in Japan before the war. Haushofer had been initiated into the ultra-secret Green Dragon Society, one of only 3 Europeans to have ever been granted the honor. There he was taught how to develop the mastery of the etheric body, or the time organism. This training apparently gave him precognitive powers, and he was able to predict the dates and exact times of enemy attacks, the number of casualties, bombardment patterns, while a general during the war. We now know this as remote viewing. Consequently, Haushofer emerged with the illustrious war record and became well known throughout Germany. It was only very reluctantly that Haushofer agreed to attend the treason trial of the rabble-rousing, brawling street politician named Adolf Hitler in 1923. He finally consented after much persuasion by a student at the university, Rudolf Hess. Disinterested at first, by the time Hitler delivered his final words in court, Haushofer, like Eckhart, was convinced that he had found the savior of the German people that he had been seeking. Haushofer subsequently visited Hitler frequently in this plush cell at the Landsberg fortress with books and papers under his arm, and helped him to write what became the Bible of the Nazi movement, Mein Kampf, virtually dictating long passages. Haushofer's domination of the entire philosophical basis of the Nazi movement was solidified when he founded the Luminous Lodge, or the Vril Society, in Berlin in the 20s. This eventually became the inner circle of the Thule Society and reportedly attracted members from other occult movements throughout Europe, as well as from Tibet, Japan, India, Kashmir, Turkey, and Ceylon. This eventually became, It was most inspirational book was The Coming Race by Edward Bulwer Lytton, a story about an underground utopian civilization where the inhabitants flew around in silent wingless vehicles powered by the force called Vril, hence the name of the society. Haushofer knew a great deal about life in Atlantis, almost as though through personal memory. He taught Hitler that the Aryan race was genetically developed by the gods of Atlantis in preparation for the coming disaster, to be the new master race. Afterward, he claimed that the Aryans were given higher consciousness and the faculty of logic thought instead of just super memory, as with the preceding subraces of Atlantis. He convinced Hitler that the pure Germans were descended from this civilization from Ultima Thule, sometimes called the Hyperborea, and were meant to be the nucleus of the new master race. Haushofer believed that this race of Aryan supermen, he convinced Hitler, supermen, survived the Atlantean upheavals and still existed somewhere underground in Tibet or in the Gobi Desert, and he convinced Hitler to try and make contact with them. From 1926 through 1942, Haushofer organized annual German expeditions to Tibet. He apparently succeeded in making contact with an underground civilization in Tibet, known in occult literature as the Agartha, sometime in the early 30s. It is known that Haushofer met some monks from this underground city and enlisted them in the Nazi cause. Some literature on this subject describes the monks as adepts of the dark side. They came to Berlin to set up a community. They were later joined by members of the Japanese Green Dragon Society at the invitation of Haushofer. In a secret meeting at the Vril Society, attended by Haushofer, Hitler, and key members of the Thule Society, a very talented medium named Maria Orsic began to get psychic transmissions from an unknown language, which they were eventually able to decipher. As they continued, it was determined that these messages were coming from two planets in the Aldebaran Society, or Aldebaran system, comprising the Sumerian Empire. Aldebaran is a huge star in the Taurus constellation, thousands times larger than our own sun, about 65 light years from Earth. The information channeled by Orsic claimed that the Sumerian Empire consisted of the Aryan or master race and a subservient race, and the Aryan colonized our solar system 500 million years ago when the Aldebaran system became uninhabitable. When they eventually reached the Earth, they founded the Sumerian civilization. According to Peter Moon and the Black Sun, as they continued to study these transmissions, the Vril Society discovered the ancient Sumerian language was identical to that of the Aldebarans, and that it is also similar to the German language. Whether or not they materialized in the flesh in the inner sanctum of the Vril Society or met with the Nazi leaders in the underground city through the mediation of the Tibetan monks, there is no doubt that Haushofer and Hitler at least met with the Ubermensch, or Superman. In a conversation with Hermann Rauschning, the governor of Danzig, about the possibility of creating a new advanced species of human through breeding, Hitler said, as reported by Rauschning, "The new man is living among us now. He is here," exclaimed Hitler, triumphantly. "Isn't that enough for you? I will tell you a secret. I have seen the new man. He is intrepid and cruel. I was afraid of him." Samuel Mathers, the founder of the Golden Dawn, had a similar encounter. In a manifesto to the members in 1896, he had wrote, "As to the secret chiefs with whom I am in touch and from whom I have received the wisdom of the second order, they used to meet me physically at a time and place fixed in advance. For my part, I believed they are human beings living on this earth, but possessed of terrible and superhuman powers. I felt I was in contact with a force so terrible that I can only compare it to the shock one would receive from being near a flash of lightning during a great thunderstorm." Could the secret chiefs or the supermen have been extraterrestrials or demons, perhaps currently living on Earth or elsewhere? In light of subsequent developments, such a conclusion seems to be unreasonable, or seems not unreasonable. Possibly because of this contact with Hitler, the Nazis were to acquire scientific knowledge and weapon technologies far beyond anything previously seen on Earth. The weapons became known as the Wonder Weapons or Wunderwaffe. This all seems especially remarkable when it is understood just how much the Nazi inner circle detested science and the Book of Knowledge, and embraced psychic information and ceremonial magic instead. According to Peter Moon, as early as 1919, the combined Thule and Vril societies began to work in a time machine which was completed in 1924 and taken to a hiding place in southern Germany. This early development, it is said, resurfaced after the war and was continued 30 years later as the Montauk Project. You want to tell me that's not coincidental? In an underground base at Montauk Point, Long Island, where ex-Nazi scientists were assisted by extraterrestrials and demons. And it was the Vril Society that reportedly developed the first anti-gravity craft, the RFZ-1, as early as 1934. The society raised its own funds for this development by soliciting donations in German newspapers. The first model crashed and burned, but the RFZ-2, 60 feet in length, flew quite well and was used as a reconnaissance craft And so it came to the attention of the SS Chief Himmler. By this time, Hitler was in power and turned the anti-gravity development project over to the SS to develop directly with the Vril. He himself was more interested in the conventional weaponry. By 1939, the SS had developed the RFZ-5, which was renamed and became the famous Haunebu-1, a two-man craft, 35 feet in diameter, powered by Tachyon-type electrogravitational motor called the Kohler converter. The motor, it was claimed, converted the Earth's gravitational energy into an electromagnetic power. The Nazi continued to improve on this model, accumulating in the Haunebu 3 late in the war. A huge craft, 200 feet in diameter. The third, it was said, could reach speeds of 24,000 miles an hour at an altitude of 15,000 feet and could carry 32 passengers. But strangely, the Germans were never able to adapt these incredible flying machines to conventional warfare. It is suggested that they couldn't train the pilots, and that the craft were not maneuverable enough to engage fighter planes in dogfights, and that they couldn't be used as bombers, although they could easily reach the U.S. without refueling. The Nazis chose to focus instead on von Braun's robotic rocketry, believing that they could also frighten the civilian population of London with their V2 flying bombs, that they could participate in a mass movement of surrender. As history makes dear, they severely underestimated the legendary British stiff upper lip. The Nazis also pioneered jet-powered propulsion. The first jet fighter plane in the world, the fearsome Messerschmitt Me-262, could easily have turned the tide in the war if it had lasted several months longer. German scientists were also working on a development of nuclear weapons long before the Americans got into the act. Nuclear fission was discovered in 1938 by Otto Hahn and Fritz Strassmann at the Kaiser Wilhelm Institute in Berlin. The Germans, producing heavy water in Vermork, Norway in 1943 in preparation for using it to refine plutonium. But Hitler and Albert Speer scuttled the program after chief civilian nuclear scientist Werner von Heisenberg failed to sell the project as a feasible way to win the war. Allied soldiers discovered uranium-based nuclear reactor underground in Hagerloch, Germany, Heisenberg's hometown, and several thousand pounds of uranium buried nearby. Heisenberg, a former protege of Nobel Peace Prize winning Danish physician Niels Bohr, deliberately delivered this research away from weaponry. So like I said in the beginning, if our presidents hadn't come to some agreement with the alien demon party, these Luciferians, to experiment on humans, experiment on Americans, we might not have had the technology to win the war. Granted, American ingenuity, the American heart, our strength, our forefathers' strength. The men of World War II were a different frickin' breed of men than what is now. There is, but they could not have defeated the Nazis without the technology that we got in the end. There's a rumor / myth that some Nazi pilots one day, I think about if they had created that jet engine plane, that fighter plane, dogfights would have been won. These Nazi pilots were they were kicking ass in the very beginning, and that's not a unknown fact. The Blitzkrieg was just, and then their fighting techniques, their dogfights were. But here's the thing. During one of those kind of whatever, a group of Nazi pilots had witnessed this strange plane that didn't have a propeller, right? And it just right by them. They tried like hell to take it down. But when they couldn't, and they looked at the pilot, who was encapsulated in glass, flying like a modern day jet jet fighter, they saw what was reported back as a ape or some sort of primate, right? It wasn't Bigfoot, it wasn't an ape. What it was an American pilot with a chimpanzee or gorilla mask on. And they purposely did that because they said, we don't want the American scientists, after this treaty with the alien / demonic creatures, they said, listen, we should do something really, let's test this thing out, but let's fuck with the Nazis too. And let's put the pilot, let's have him wear a mask that looks like a gorilla. So when they land, they don't go back in and say, hey, we just had a dogfight with an American. We need to get, and in the technology of this fighter plane, jet, was so advanced, but it was flown by this monkey / gorilla looking thing. And that was just so when those pilots landed and they reported that, they would think they were off their rocker. The Germans would be like, dude, what are you talking about? Lay off the meth. What are you talking about? There's no flying monkeys up in the frickin', And lo and behold, it truly was a American pilot with a mask on. It's just freaking insane. It's insane how close, if our presidents and the Americans didn't come to a conclusion, that the war could have ended a different way. There is evidence to suggest that this situation evolved to the point where these alien / demons were actually working shoulder to shoulder with German scientists. Hitler envisioned a new world order to last thousands of years. With the help of the architect Albert Speer, he designed grandiose buildings and monuments to accommodate his new one-world civilization, to be supported by labor of the inferiors. However, it now seems that this reputed alliance with the extraterrestrial was a marriage of convenience, since apparently they had a similar goal, and indeed may have been using Hitler as some kind of straw man to facilitate their intended takeover of the planet. If all of this is true, it puts the European war in a totally new light. Just one piece of elaborate worldwide campaign of alien design, which included the participation of Japan in order to control the seas. From this perspective, the outbreak of World War II can be viewed as a push by the extraterrestrial/demons to impose a fascist dictatorship of the entire planet under their control. If that is the case, it appears that the planning may have begun in the early 20th century, and that Hitler's rise to power was coordinated by Mussolini in Italy and the emergence of Hideki Tojo in Japan. Such a scenario would help to explain many strange similarities between the three fascist movements, especially the militarization of governments, the imposition of elaborate and sophisticated propaganda machines. Propaganda, after all, is nothing more than a form of national mind control. And we subject the aliens to the very skilled. Propaganda, after all, it is nothing more than a form of national mind control, and we suspect the aliens are very skilled in these techniques. Sorry, I was trying to read something prior to. The text is so small that I start reading, and then I scroll down because the next thing is cloning, and it is just such, like, I've said this 1,000 times in other uploads talking about how advanced these technologies were and why these demons gave us this is because they wanted essentially they wanted humanity to wipe itself out again. There was a nuclear war. There is evidence of a nuclear war in antiquity. So like they did it before to us. They had us wipe ourselves out. And then and there's evidence of these nuclear wars. There's evidence of it in New Mexico. There's evidence of it all throughout the world, all throughout Europe, Asia. It's just, and these demons are a direct descendant of the original fallen angels, the creator of the Nephilim. I don't know. Maybe I'm not making sense, but this is scary. To me, it all just points to where these tentacles come from, the Luciferian agenda. At the close of World War I in 1919, under the terms of Versailles Treaty, Germany was allowed to keep only 100,000 men in an army and 15,000 in a navy. They were not permitted to have submarines or military aircraft. This situation remained basically stable for the next 14 years until Hitler came to power in 1933, and then in March of 1935 instituted the renewed military training and open violation of the treaty. To archive the ambitious goal of world conquest, Germany would need a bright new army of young, ruthless, efficient, well-trained stormtroopers. Nuremberg in the millions. In 1933, it seemed that an impossible dream, since the army then consisted mainly of 100,000 aging, dispirited veterans of World War I. And some raw recruits. It seemed especially hopeless in view of the depressed economic conditions of Germany at that time. Yet in September of the very next year, 6 months before, at the Nuremberg Nazi rally in 1934, 160,000 stateward German soldiers with backpacks and rifles stood silently at attention in precise rank as Hitler, Heinrich Himmler, and SA Chief Victor Lutz walked down the wide center aisle toward. So I had to end that quick because literally Tigger was scratching my legs. This part is so important. So At the close of World War I in 1919, under the terms of the Versailles Treaty, Germany was allowed to keep 100,000 men in its army, 15,000 in its navy. They were not permitted to have submarines nor military aircraft. This situation remained basically stable for the next 14 years until Hitler came into power in 1933. Then, in the March of 35, instituted conscription of a renewed military training, an open violation of the treaty. To achieve that extravagantly ambitious goal of world conquest, Germany would need a bright new army of young, ruthless, efficient, well-trained stormtroopers, numbering in the millions. In 1933, that seemed like an impossible dream, since the army then consisted of 100,000 aging, dispirited veterans of World War I, and some raw recruits. It seemed especially hopeless in view of the depressed economy conditions of Germany at that time. Yet in September of the very next year, 6 months before the conscription began, at Nuremberg Nazi rally in 1934, 160,000 stalwart German soldiers with backpacks and rifles stood silently at attention in the precise ranks as Hitler, Heinrich, and Himmler and the SA chief Victor Lutz walked down a wide center aisle toward a flaming column bordering a gigantic wreath honoring the German soldiers killed in battle. Fantastic scene was captured in the now famous documentary Triumph of the Will by legendary film photographer Leni Riefenstahl. Where did those 160,000 perfect young soldiers come from? In October of 1935, Hitler supplied the answer to that riddle when he made public that he kept 21 infantry divisions under wraps. In 1934, he announced that they would now become the core of the new German army. So that's where the 160,000 came from. But where did the 21 divisions come from? An infantry division can be as many as 20,000 troops. So it seems that somehow Miller magically got his hands on an instant army of about 500,000 soldiers, with no explanation of where they came or how they became trained. He announced also an additional 21 divisions would soon be added. One may be forgiven for wondering just how it's possible for all this to be accomplished only 1 year after Hitler became the Chancellor of Germany. Now we have the evidence of alien and demon involvement in war preparations. A startling explanation presents itself. It is now believed by many that the alien/demons had mastered cloning biotechnology, which we already knew they did by the initial angel that fell in love with the daughters of men. Not only did they breed with those daughters of men, but they also were they bred with animals too, but they genetically created creatures as well. They did genetic experimentation. So that's where they got it from. And in fact, the small alien gray of abduction fame are clones themselves. Could it be possible that Hitler's alien/demon friends presented him with a ready-made million-man army of cloned stormtroopers? We have already seen that the planning of World War II probably began in the early part of the century. Was Hitler's army secretly growing in spaceships or underground cities, even as real soldiers were dying by the millions on battlefields of Europe? Perhaps George Lucas knew more than is commonly believed when, in 2001, he wrote Episode 2 of Star Wars saga titled Attack of the Clones. When it comes to fantastic possibilities, Nazi ET connection, though that is only the beginning. This last part of it is something that I'm just tying in because it's the end, or because it's almost at the same time, but I wanted to tie it in because it's very interesting. While the Draco/Gray, it is claimed, gave Germans fantastic weapons, including jet propulsion, rocketry, television guided missiles, anti-gravity aircraft, nuclear technology, and possibly even cloned army. The Allies were not completely without alien/demonic assistance. These creatures, it is said, gave the Allies one man, Nikola Tesla. It was Tesla, according to this line of argument, who first saw the promise in radar in 1917 and was instrumental in the development and use in war. Consequently, the British and United States had sophisticated radar systems deployed earlier in the war using Tesla's patents, while the Germans gave it scant attention, and it was radar that won the Battle of Britain. Tesla and Roosevelt met in 1917 when FDR was Secretary of the Navy. Roosevelt was very impressed with Tesla's genius. In 1936, according to some reports, he put Tesla in charge of the Invisibility Project, working with the Navy. In 1940, as the story goes, they succeeded in making a ship disappear in the Brooklyn Naval Yard. Whether or not invisibility was secretly used in the war is unknown. Tesla also invented, it is claimed, a particle beam weaponry, which he publicly referred to as the death ray. It was not, it seems, developed soon enough to use in the war, but satellite-based versions have since. It is believed became potent weapons in both the United States and Soviet arsenals. Tesla is also said to have been offered a large amount of money to go and work for the Germans, but he refused to, and that he remained an American patriot to the very end. Tesla often made mention of his off-planet friends. Some say, sometime in the mid-30s, they say he arranged a meeting between Roosevelt and the Pleiadians, which possibly are aliens. Or are possibly angels. I really truly believe that. The bad, alien/demons, and then there's good, alien/angels. Pleiadians being one. Or they may be demons themselves and just, put that a wolves in sheep clothing kind of. Arrange a meeting between Roosevelt and the Pleiadians, which supposedly took place in a ship in Atlantic. While alien tracking internet community is believed that some sort of agreement came out of that meeting, and the Federation representative may have consulted at the Pentagon for most of the war. So, it's kind of hard to deny when you hear it like that. That the... And now that I think about it, just because these Pleiadians in the Nordic, they looked very similar to us humans. Like I just said, wolves in sheep clothing. They gave us the same weapons that the Draco and Greys gave the Nazis. So with that, folks, I hope you all enjoyed this upload as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. I'd like to thank you all for supporting this channel. It is, after all, your support that helps the channel to continue to grow and go, and what gives us all a place and a chance to share our experiences and theories judgment-free. Everyone's simply treated with the respect that we deserve. Please stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, pets, family, and our friends. These creatures are real. These events have happened. Share this information with those you love and care about, and it may just help save their lives someday. Until next time, never stop asking questions, never stop searching for the truth, and God bless you all.